When I think about unethical companies overall, this is kind of what comes to mind, right? They were doing consent and collection that was actually borderline on illegal, and that was just one of the things Uber was guilty of. They were also guilty of lining up software so they could tell whether or not cops were on the road in places they weren't supposed to be. They were using information in order to track third parties like people like me that would say bad things about them on stage. They would track me because they could in real time if I was using the application in God mode, right? This is the kind of stuff they were up to. The thing about this is, though, you guys, this is what happens to the brand, right? How do you think you crawl back from this? It got so bad, Eric Holder was called in. Remember? It was so bad, Eric Holder came in. He actually took a look at the whole thing and came back and said, here's the 27 things you need to change. And it started with replacing the CEO. And if you'll remember, at the time, they were looking for a woman, and no woman would take that job. Either she thought it wouldn't be helpful to be in that role, or that it wasn't worth saving. I don't know which, but they couldn't hire a woman. But they did hire the person who used to run Expedia. And things have been going better for them. The last thing I heard about them, before they told MIT they didn't know how to do math, but before that, they had been doing a lot of volunteer work around Meals on Wheels. That's how you bring back your reputation. That's how you manage those risks, right? That's what it takes to be an ethical company. Unethical sales practices. Do we remember 8 is great? I want to think deep down inside, it rhymed, and everybody didn't mean it for it to get as bad as it got, right? What they ended up with is first-line employees behaving unethically to meet a sales goal that was next to impossible, right? They wanted to sell 8 products to 1 customer. The industry average was 2. 8, that's a lot to ask, right? So when unethical behavior is happening at the top, it leaks down to the bottom, and everybody ends up doing that, right? Have to think about this stuff. And it's not just ethical failures that causes problems, safety failures lead to ethical failures and outcomes. Do I need to talk about BP? I mean, they're doing a little better, right? I mean, if anything, BP was extraordinarily good at managing incredibly horrible crisis. I mean, they were really, really, really good at it. Questionable ethics, Foxconn. You guys know who Foxconn is, right? This is the company that builds your iPad, your iPhone. This is where that comes from. Now, if there's anybody who knows what a bad ethics incident would do to his company, it is Tim Cook, right? There is no way you would pay $750 for a tablet or $1,500 for a tablet if you thought it was being made by slave labor, child labor, conflict minerals, like whatever you could come up with, that you'd expect for that kind of money that stuff wouldn't exist. So when Foxconn had a problem where people would clock out of their shift, go to the dorms, go up to the 7th floor, walk to the edge of the building, and leap to their death. Now, this happened a lot before it actually found its way back to Apple. And the first thing Tim Cook says is, you got 24 hours to fix this, or you're not going to be part of my supply chain. That's what he told them. And so they called him back, I think it was a couple days later, and they said, we got it figured out. Figured out, don't worry about it. You know what they did? They put up a net. That is how you manage risk. No, Tim Cook wasn't having it. He got on the plane, he went down there, all those photos you see of him talking to workers on the line, wanting to know how much they work, what are they eating at night, how much sleep are they getting, why are they staying here overnight, and why are they living in these dorms, why is there a 24-hour shift going? He had a lot of questions, and now you can actually go download that report and read it every year, if you'd like to, about what that supply chain is doing, because ethics matter. You can't be part of that supply chain and behave like this. I think it will go down in history as my favorite cheating thing ever. I call it the Lance Armstrong rule. You get away with it for 7 years, and then that's it. No more, right? Lance got away with it for 7 years, and now it's done. Same thing. If you think about it, what Volkswagen did was extraordinary. For 7 years, they told the world clean diesel was real, that you could run an engine that usually is housed in a big rig And you can somehow stick that under the hood of a rabbit. And we all were like, yeah, oh my gosh, look, you did it. Oh, you're right. Throw away the electric car. It's all diesel. They had 7 years of clean car awards. They had to give them back. When they found out those cars were 40 times dirtier than what they thought, that was a huge problem. It was such a huge problem that they had to put 6.7 billion euros aside. They had €1 reduction in their annual capital expenditure. The cost of government fines as everything else is putting them at about 34 billion. And come on, they were buying the cars back at what, $37,000 a piece? That's not the way you want to come out of this. And listen, there was no chance Volkswagen was going to go under. Just like there was no chance Ford was going to go under. This is too big to fail. The German auto industry is too big to fail. By the way, my favorite thing about Volkswagen, you know what the part is that sells the most? Sausages. Yeah, it's a sausage at the factory. It has a part number because that's how they order it. And they sell it out the back door. It's their best-selling part, sausages. That's Volkswagen. It caused industry-wide damage, actually. This was a case where one bad apple was going to spoil the whole bunch, right? I mean, who's now sitting in jail over this? The Audi CFO. Think about this. People went to jail over this, right? I mean, finally, but people went to jail over this. And it wasn't even people at Volkswagen, right? This is what happens. Industry-wide, Mercedes-Benz said, all right, listen, you're causing us so much grief, Volkswagen, that we are going to give you our chief compliance officer. We're going to let her out of her contract, and we're sending her over to you because now the regulators won't even return their phone calls, right? And now, what are you going to do? You have to get along with the regulators. You've got all these cars sitting down at Long Beach Harbor, not allowed into California because of the EPA testing. They're rotting there today. Germany won't take them back, and we won't let them in the country, or we won't let them in our state. So this is what's happening, right? This is what we're after. So for Mercedes-Benz to get out of this, they had to send their compliance people over there because Volkswagen had wasted all of the goodwill they had with regulators. They had so much goodwill with regulators, as a matter of fact, that when the test came back weird, they actually went to Volkswagen and said, check our math. You squandered that. You squandered it. Year after year after year. Brand resilience. This is the ability of the brand to live up to and remain consistent with the brand promise. What I promise you is what I give you. Maintaining integrity even in the face of damaging interactions, events, or circumstances. People leapt to their death from the top of the building. If I have a resilient brand, I can go fix that. If I don't have a resilient brand, I'm not going to be able to fix that. Right? So when we think about it, if we ensure that the brand promise and the brand experience overlaps, and this could be a good experience, bad experience, no experience at all. That would be your utility company, right? They're incredibly resilient. They give you absolutely no customer experience at all, and you can't go anywhere else. It doesn't matter what they do to you. They're really resilient, right? Not so sure about a brand like Apple if they're caught using child labor. That would be a very vulnerable brand. Or let's say you're Volkswagen and you have 7 years of clean diesel awards and you're found out to be cheating. That should have been you. That was your reputation. This is who you ended up really being, right? This is why this stuff matters. And quite frankly, when we talk about risk, I don't talk about reputational risk. Actually, reputation is an impact of every single risk in your risk registry today. About 80% of it has a reputational impact to you. So if you have a single or a couple of risks in the registry that talk about reputation, you're missing 80% of the stuff that actually matters. So go back through the registry and look at reputation as an impact. And it heightens the probability, right? So security risks, because of reputation, let's say we're RSA and we now have a security breach. We're RSA. That risk is really big for us because of the impact we're going to have with our customers. As a matter of fact, RSA did get breached. Anybody in IT when that happened? Yeah, okay. I was in IT too. So I was at a law firm doing audit, and I remember EMC descended on us like locusts with donuts. Just locusts with donuts. And they came down and they just said, this is it. We're absolutely going to stop this right now. And they did. They really did. And I always say, if you want to see how to get through one of these things, Go look at the RSA breach, but remember, you don't have the EMC sales force to go get that done. So whatever you're going to do, it's going to have to happen in crisis management. All incidents have impacts, right? Netflix. Remember when they changed the pricing and 800,000 people left? That was bad. That was an impact to the business for sure. Their stock went from $240 a share down to $73 before the CEO, called uncle, right? BP, notorious for all kinds of stuff. Equifax, that breach data still hasn't shown up. We don't know where it is. I know where it is. The Russians have it, but seriously. And then we have Volkswagen. All of that stuff has impacts. But we can look at ethics and we can say we're going to have a competitive advantage. Because here's one thing I know. I have access to all kinds of marketing information working at Forrester. And before you think that doesn't have anything to do with what we do, it actually does. And what we know is millennials. And I know, I look like one. But I'm not. I'm much older. But here's what I'll say about them. They have an ethics thing, and they expect corporations to have one too. And so part of me feels like, is it the millennials that are politicizing the brand, or is a politicized brand just part of being what it means to be a brand in the United States in the era of social media? I'm not sure, but either way, ethics is important. And reputation is an even greater concern in the age of the customer. Right? So we look at here, so customer-obsessed companies, a customer-obsessed company, USAA, customer-obsessed. To some extent, Starbucks. When you talk to them about how they manage incidents, they're customer-obsessed. Those companies, you'll see here, 41% see reputational risk. They have information security and privacy risks. They recognize it 40% versus 26%. You can see if you are customer-centric and you are customer-obsessed, you care about this kind of risk and these kinds of impacts. And quite frankly, whatever platform you have today, again, go back into your registry, create a field that says reputational risk, pick a high, medium, low, 0 through 5, 1 through 10, I don't care what it is, pick it, and pick your reputational risk because it's this kind of exposure that's going to kill you in the long run, right? And it's just not marketing and PR anymore. I keep telling everybody, we have a role to play in risk management. I spent all last year trying to convince people that you should never go through a digital transformation without going through an ethical one too, because you're just going to find yourself in a mess of trouble, right? And they look at me like I'm crazy, but it's because I'm preaching to marketing people. But I finally got them to recognize a few things. Number one, they create risk. Number two, that risk negatively impacts us. And number three, they must track it like the rest of us. Boy, they weren't ready for that. In the end, though, we all agree that, yeah, they need it. Not just in case the marketing people in here are just driving me crazy. They're like, Renee, shut up. Millennials, again, they expect you to pick a side. And then if they don't like the side you're picked, they'll leave. It's their thing. I had an Uber driver explain to me, he said he was sick of his friends because he said their ethics aren't true. I mean, what's true ethics? And he said, no, it's ethics because it's cool. Like, it's cool to be a vegan, but for some reason you still eat Burger King French fries. Like, he's just like, it doesn't make any sense. You're being an opportunistic ethics person. Opportunistic ethics. I thought, my gosh, if only more corporations thought that way, right? Ethical transformation has to happen. Global privacy laws are changing, and it's all their fault. If you want to talk about the legal use of data that was horribly unethical, let's talk about it. Deep Root Analytics, the RNC data operation, had 190 million records of voting records of all Americans, right? 190 million voters and all of their voting records. And that was put on an S3 bucket out on AWS with no password. And I don't mean like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean like no password, just wide open. Thought they didn't have to do anything with that. That was public data. Well, it's public data as long as it's printed out in a form in Kentucky somewhere. It's not public data when it's amassed at 194 million strong and stuck on a server and left out there to do nothing. Enter Cambridge Analytica. We knew they were a spook shop. They'd been out there for a while. They are responsible, probably in some weird way, maybe even for for the stuff that happened in the Middle East that spurred all of this change, the Arab Spring, they think that they might have even helped do that. That's what Cambridge Analytica used to do. Cambridge Analytica found itself in the possession of 75 million Facebook accounts that they illegally got from a Russian professor at Cambridge University. And that information, Facebook turned a blind eye to for almost 3 years. When they finally got caught, they said, what? Oh, we're so sorry. Okay, that was like the 17th, we're so sorry. And I have sorry fatigue, so I'm done. But this is what happens, and this is what's going to result from all of this, right? We're going to end up in this country. We're lucky if we're going to get out of this with just GDPR-like laws. I think it's going to actually end up much worse. Do yourself a favor. Go Google Mark Warner's social media policy paper and see what's headed their way. It's unbelievable how much privacy is about to come down just because of unethical use of data, right? Companies make digital transformations without making ethical ones. That results in corporate practices that have wildly diverged from the customer expectation. So I'm on Facebook because I want to show pictures of my dogs to my mom. I sew them sweaters and stuff. It's like, so I put dogs on Facebook, talking to my mom, subverting democracy. That's not what I meant to do. I just meant to, honestly, even my ulcer has its own page. He's Hank Pelori. Go check him out. But yeah, even my ulcer has it. That's how much I loved Facebook. Even my ulcer had its own page. It toured Germany. Go check it out. But here, this is what it's all about. This is the digital transformation for Verizon, the Verizon Hum. This thing, you plug it into your car, and it's supposed to tell you when it's going to go, south, right? It's supposed to tell you. So if you have an older car that doesn't have all the stuff, you plug this into the monitor port, and it's supposed to tell you stuff, and it's going to tell you on your phone. And so that's supposed to help you. Yeah, all right, let me give you a clue. The first chance you have of understanding that your alternator is gone is that the car doesn't start. Oh, the other thing is that the Hum drains your battery. So your car doesn't start then either. So it could be your alternator, or it could be this product. Either way, if you just read the privacy policy, you'll see what this is all about. They want your data. They just want your data. They know where you're driving, and they know both of the datas now. They have location data, but now they have all kinds of car data too. So now you know I'm on the 405 in this kind of car at this time of day all the time, because that's what time I drive to work. Let's say we get smart billboards going, and I spend a ton of money on Amazon, because it's the only place to get dresses that look like your grandma on vacation. So at any rate, you've got to get this stuff done. Verizon Hum lets you know exactly what they want from you. They want to market to you in a very extreme way. And this is how they're going to do it. They're going to do it by having all of this information. Do you guys remember Talking Barbie? And I don't mean, not that you pull her string and she's like, math is hard. Not her. It's a different one where you push her belt and she says, your name? Where'd you go to school? Has your mom had a baby? Whoa! Hey, I did not buy U.S. Census Barbie. I thought I bought Hello Barbie. What do you need to know that for, right? Well, it turns out Mattel makes 30% of its revenue on Fisher-Price. And it's too creepy if the marketing guy calls you and says, any new kids? Like, that's too creepy, right? So they're going to use Barbie. Barbie, an icon to girls like me. I mean, look the way I dress. Come on, an icon. And they're going to use it to spy on your kids so they can sell them more stuff. I mean, think about it. Your daughter's telling this thing like, oh, Barbie, if only I could have a pony. And then, bam, Amazon feed full of ponies. Full of ponies from farms, not farms, ponies, right? That's what it's all about. And in the end, they're doing this on the back of children. And if you go back to Adweek, the week this thing was launched, the hashtag was hell no Barbie. Like, parents hated it. It was a production run of about 10,000 toys. Tickle Me Elmo. It was meant to be a really, really huge success. That had a production run of 250,000. 10,000. 5,000 of them end up half off at Walmart. There's so many people won't let this into their house because they think it's going to be listening to their children. They weren't wrong. But if you go look at Adweek for the week that this was launched, Mattel thought it was the biggest plus they could have ever got, because it was the first time ever in print that digital and Mattel were said in the same sentence. That was their win on the back of an iconic brand. And listen, I would love to bag on NSA Barbie for like the next half hour, but I have bigger fish to fry, and it's the utility companies. You're like, okay, Renee, where are we going with this? No, it is the utility companies. Way back in the day, right? If you look at the timeline of the utility companies, Thomas Edison opens the first power plant and creates distributed electricity in Lower Manhattan. 1882, DC electricity. That's the first paying customer. Literally, nothing has changed. No, I'm kidding. Things have changed, right? Let's say we went to the moon. We learned how to microwave potatoes. Not even like in that order. Like we went to the moon before we could microwave a potato. Isn't that something else? And we had some really horrific failures too. Again, like New Coke. It can't come back, you guys. It was a horrific effort to get rid of it. Please don't let it come back. It seems fun. The 2009 Recovery and Reinvestment Act gave the utility companies billions and billions of dollars in order to modernize the grid. Now, instead of going after the grid, because it's 250,000 miles of high voltage wires, it's 5.5 million miles of distributed wiring, right? Going after that seems to make a lot of sense to me, but nope, they went over the endpoint. I wouldn't let them take mine. They installed smart meters. And when they installed smart meters with that money, we learned some interesting things. One of the things we learned was that the customer benefit was supposed to be there. I was supposed to know how much energy I used. I was supposed to be able to change my habits to, fix that energy. It was going to give me micro data. It was going to tell us as a community how we were. No, none of that has happened, right? A lot of that was supposed to come. Now, I will say that my utility company now is telling me, based on the voltage coming out of my house, I'm lower than most people because I have a bunch of energy-saving stuff going on. And it tells me by how much. With the energy that I save, they can light 82,000 more houses or something like that. They tell me that stuff over the course of a year. That's what's supposed to be the customer benefit of this stuff. Here's the thing, though. It collects a lot of data. And it does it in something called a pulse. I like to think of it as a boop, boop, a pulse. I mean, boop, that seems really benign. Boop, come on, boop. There's anywhere between 1,500 to 250,000 of these. Boop. It's taking 1,500 data points, boop, and sending it back to the phone company so they can learn from it, right? Really interesting thing is part of the reason for having this data is to make it public for research. It was part of the deal that everybody cut for having this data to begin with. So you can go out on the internet and pull down a data set. I pulled down a data set in Massachusetts 2 years ago. It's a single-family home. That's all I got. I don't know what street it is. I can just tell you, not even a zip code. I can tell you it's in the state of Massachusetts. But here's what I know. I know it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It has a front porch that has a front light that's always on. It has a backyard with lights, and that's not on all the time. It seems like it goes off at 10 o'clock every night. It has a finished basement. It has modern appliances, and it has a 2-car garage out back. So you're saying, so what? I could go to Zillow and do that too. Wait, I got more, because I know that the son is sitting in the front room with all the lights off, the Xbox on, and the TV on. So he is definitely playing with something, and he's playing it loud. His sister's in her bedroom, and she's listening to her clock radio, and it has her iPod plugged into it. She's been in there for a while, and she has all the lights on, including in her bathroom. Mom is sitting in her bedroom. She's got all the lights on. She had a light on in the bathroom, but she turned it off in the 10 minutes that I was looking at it. And she actually had all the lights on in the room, had the TV on, and was on the phone. That's probably a really annoying conversation. Dad is in the kitchen cooking a panini. Boop. In the data economy, I always thought it was going to be the telco operators that were going to have all the data. Seems to me like this is where all the data lies, right? So this is the stuff where, and this is where I urge energy companies to think about this, right? How does an energy company keep from becoming the next Cambridge Analytica? How do they keep their data from being used unethically? How do they go through this incredible digital transformation and come out the other side intact and not in trouble with their regulator? And should that be their goal? Or should their goal be to come out the other side of that more ethical than when they went into it? I'd like it to be that way. But there's a role we play in risk management, right? I need to know what's going on here. I need to know what's going on in the digital transformation. Where are we headed? What are we doing? What do we think we're going to adopt? What does that mean to how we work, who we are, what we do? And is this going to stay in line with how we behave? Because all of this is really important. Because in this day and age, who do you trust more with the environment? The EPA or Patagonia? Who do you trust more with your data? The FBI or Apple? Right? We trust corporations in ways we haven't before, and it may be that they're filling a vacuum for us, I don't know, but right now we have expectations of corporations that we've only held our government to that standard. We now hold corporations to that standard. So I ask all of you, if you're risk managers today, what are you doing to manage that risk? What are you doing to manage the brand risk? What are you doing to manage the risk in the digital transformation? What are you doing to tell the story about reputational risk to the organization? Because this all matters. At any rate, we all in California tried to, the whole state. Okay, first, it was Marin County. Marin County decided it wanted to actually opt out. And the Public Utility Commission was like, yeah, all right, we'll let you opt out. And then LA County was like, well, hang on, Marin got to do it, we want to do it. And then once we did it, everybody else was like, well, wait a minute, we all want out too. So finally, the Public Utility Commission was like, stop. We already took the money. We can't give it back. We can't take the stuff off your walls. Stop. If you don't want it, tell us. We'll come take it away and charge you $75. So that's what I did. So I now have a dumb meter. I pay $75 for that privilege. But now they don't know things about me. At least, well, I have an Alexa. I don't know what I accomplished in the long run, right? Everybody's listening to me. Identity and access management, we have to think about this stuff. It's going to be what actually manages this stuff going in the future. Microservices and API-based IAM, that's all going to be part of this. When we look at all of this stuff, but remember, one more thing. Worry about the right risks. If you go right now and find every company that was breached 75 million records or more, put them all into one portfolio, and watch that stock portfolio over a while, and what you'll see is, yeah, it outperforms the market. I have a bunch of different companies that were breached 75 million records or more, and they beat the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow 7 days a week, just twice on Sunday, thank you. And it's outperforming the market by 22%. Now you can say it's because they're a bunch of blue chips, they're big companies. I'll argue they all suffered gigantic breaches, and it's had no effect on their stock price. I'll give you one better. Adobe was breached, source code for Cold Fusion. This is the stuff that web servers run on all over the world. Their source code was stolen. They did the notification on a blog overnight on a Saturday. Their stock went up. It never went down. It's like the whole world woke up and was like, oh my God, that's right, Adobe's still here. We should invest in that. It was really weird. It was like it never even went down. If that's not the real risk, if that impact isn't going to be the one that's going to shape the market, what is the impact that's going to shape the market? The ethical failure. That's going to shape the market. These are companies that have breached their ethics. And you see right down here at this minus 60, Abercrombie and Fitch hit that. Lululemon hit that. They all lost their CEOs. Facebook hit that. Zuck's still there because they can't get rid of him. They tried again last week. It didn't work. This is what happens. Your CEO gets fired because of this. Right? They're not going to get fired over a data breach. You made money. As a matter of fact, that is so consistent. I wanted to write a paper that was like, breach yourself for better revenue. And then I was told it lacked editorial integrity. But still, I think I'm onto something. This is what you're protecting yourself from. This is the stuff that matters. And because we don't have a way to talk about it, we don't have a way to put it in a dashboard, we don't have a, yes, you do. Remember I said 80% of what you have in your registry right now has reputational impacts? You pull those out, you put them in an index, and you say, this is our reputational index. This is the stuff that causes us the most risk from a reputational perspective. We're going to watch this. Oh, by the way, if you want to do this in a really meaningful way for more than just, operations or IT or finance, or start thinking about sales, marketing, CX. You can create a CX index. There are things that you do from a financial perspective, from an end user perspective, how you do your architecture that is impacting customer experience. Well, create a customer experience index and say, today we have no risk in customer experience. That's a crazy story to be able to tell. And all we did was create a different index. So, you know, when we sit around and we talk about, earlier we were talking about context. Can the platforms handle the context of either more than one company, more than one department? Can we handle context? I think that's the most interesting thing about reputational impact, right? Like, to me, it all comes down to context. And context is what makes Dorothy, a lost girl from Kansas who dreams of a different life and it's better, and then she's, you know, trying to get home, hit on the head, wakes up, right? In one case, Dorothy is actually a young kid who is really trying to figure out her way in the world. But look at it from Oz's perspective. She's a foreigner who lands in their land, kills the first person she meets, hooks up with the crooked mayor, and don't tell me this isn't about politics, the mayor was there. They give her some food and candy and send her on her way where she radicalizes 4 more people, kills 3 more people, and then runs away with a con man in a balloon. That one we need the National Guard for. Context matters, right? So when you think about how you're doing this stuff and you're thinking about the context and you're thinking about how this all matters and why, how do we do risk management in marketing? Context. How do we do this in sales? Context. I can't tell you how many more things we find when we think about things this way. By the way, there's a research paper out there if you're a client. Go check it out. We talk about how to think about this differently. That for me, when you talk about operational, financial, those aren't risks to me anymore. For me, those are targets. I think of this completely differently. They needed a new way to express how we talk about this context. You guys should definitely check it out. Maybe MetricStream will have me back next year to talk about it. But it's definitely a new way to talk about risk that takes into consideration all these little nooks and crannies that we don't think about. And then things like 8 is great, or we've been cheating on diesel, or all these other, it's not our pants' fault, it's your fat legs, or whatever, I don't know. Whatever your CEO's out there doing crazy, this is why you want to know, right? This is what happens with an ethical failure. And, you know, does reputation matter? Yeah, it does, right? The best reputations just do better. Those are the worst at the bottom, best at the top. I'll give you one more. If Coke had the same reputation as Pepsi, their stock would rise by 3.3% and they would gain $4 billion in market share. If Colgate had the same reputation as P&G, 6.2%, $2 billion in market share. CVS had the same as Walgreens, it would be 6.9% or $3.9 billion in market share. And you know what? That might actually happen now that they've taken, now that they've partnered with Aetna, or they've been bought by Aetna. I think that's going to put them on a par where they're not just a place where you go to buy gum and pick up your meds. They're going to be seen as a health partner, and that's going to put them on a path with Walgreens from a reputational perspective that I think is going to be really good for them. So if you look at that, right? So even look at that. Look at how that's going to pay off in the long run. I mean, my gosh, it's 6.9% if they were had just as good a reputation. I mean, can you imagine? This is better than organic growth. Sometimes you don't even see this good a payback out of acquisition. Come on. This is just caring. Just care. And then you have to tell people you care, right? I will leave the appendix. And I will ask, do you guys have any questions? Do you understand reputation is not a risk in and of itself. Reputation is an impact of your existing risks. Financial, operational, yeah. I'm going to have to. Oh, here comes somebody.
Okay. As loud as I can. Perfect. Thank you. First, I want to make a statement, then I have a question. You know, it's interesting because I'm doing my second MBA this time in risk management. When I did my first one, I was in my 20s. Now it's different, obviously. But we covered marketing risk, image risk, people risk, people you're hiring. What if they don't get along with each other?
Yes, employee risk.
What if they do something that they don't think is bad? They just write a statement. What if they say something else? How's it affecting it? And this is a whole MBA on risk management. When I first signed up, I said, well, I'm going to be doing cyber risk, IT risk, and I did. It's part of the program. But it has expanded to so much more of what you're including. And what's interesting, in the last 2 years, been 2 international standards come out. First one is ISO 26000, which is social responsibility. 640 countries have implemented it.
Yep.
Countries. That doesn't mean each company has.
Right.
The other one is ISO 37001, anti-bribery. 640 countries, same number, have agreed on it, but not the company. So my question is, the MBA is teaching this. We've taken it. I've taken it. The ISOs are teaching us. We know this. How do we get the corporations to say, these are resources? Why aren't we using them? And that's my question.
So I find that when I'm having that conversation, it's because they never thought they had the problem, right? It's almost like, for me, marketing was like a black hole, right? We gave them a ton of money, and if it converted, it converted. And if it didn't, it didn't. And sales was going to be the metric that was going to tell us whether that converted. And my point was, that's all well and good, except when you took that marketing campaign out there, it had risk. What did you do to mitigate that? Did you have a plan for when people came after you on Twitter? Did you have a plan for, and what you find out is they don't think of it that way, right? And so for me, it was teaching them that they had the problem. And actually, I taught them that through collective bargaining. And I just showed up and said, hey, did you guys know you had a problem?
I guess my question is more, because I understand as an individual how we can affect it, but what's your opinion of how we can get this to pass throughout all the corporations without an individual having to come in and make that happen?
Yeah, it's a tone at the top, and it's culture. Like, you're never going to go after a sales program or a marketing program or your employees from a risk perspective if you don't see value in this whole, like, you haven't bought all in. Like, you got to be all in on this to say, I want to know everything. Like EGRC, I want to know it all. That's a huge commitment, right? And if you want to be all in like that, then I don't have to convince you to do it. If you're not all in on that, then I have to stand on a stage and convince you need to do it. So I would say that if you're a forward thinker, it would be easy to walk in and say, I think the easiest way to do it is to just create the indexes and then tell a story through those indexes and bring that dashboard to them and say, hey, did you know? And then I tell you a nice little story about your data, and then ta-da, and now you can use this from now on. I think that's the best way to spur adoption, just because I'm giving you something you would probably want to know, and I'm not doing it in a way where I'm forcing transparency on you. Because that's the other thing, I'm forcing transparency on you. That marketing people don't really like that, I found, yeah. Salespeople either. But the other thing I'll say, though, there's a difference between risk that is bad and risk that is good, right? Risk is opportunity, right? And so it's, for me, lately it seems to me, working with my colleagues at Forrester, especially on the security side, that it seems to me like risk management as a process has been turned into FUD. Like, you guys, CISOs lost a chance for their FUD to stick, so now they're hoping FUD will, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, will stick with risk management. And what I need to keep realizing to remind everybody is we don't do risk management so we can take less risk. We do risk management so we can take more risk. And the more places we do that risk management, the more places we can take those risks, right? And that's how I would explain it. I don't know that anybody's going to ever come up with, here's ISO 99,862, and it includes everything. I don't see that happening. But I do see, it wasn't just me either. There was a bunch of us this past year that said, we need to think about risk differently, because these black swans that keep coming up are really just spray-painted chickens as far as I could tell. I mean, it all comes down to you didn't patch something, you didn't listen to somebody, you didn't look somewhere. That's why we're in this position. I think that's what spurred me to say, I'm not willing to call this a swan anymore. So I need a new way to find these things. And that's what spurred me to say, just give me a different dashboard, right? So, and that's how I would do it. I would give marketing a dashboard and say, hey, check this out, you guys, here's what I got. That's all I can do for them. At the end of the day, though, it's a tone at the top. We all know that, right? It's why, and the other thing I'll say is it's very difficult to be an ethical company, right? Patagonia lives and breathes that stuff every minute of every day. When they gave $10 million to the federal government after Trump took office, they gave money to the federal government for climate change research, and then Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accord, and they took their money back. And they gave it to lobbying firms that were lobbying against pulling us out of the climate accord. This year, they took their tax return, the money they got because of the taxes that they were given. The people in that company, the employees, voted to not take that money themselves, but to give it to climate change research. They could have done whatever they wanted with that $10 million. It was their tax break. They said, do you guys want it? They said, nope, we want it to go toward climate change. That's living your values. That's hard. That's a buy-in. That's big. Like, that's what you're asking them to do, and that's a company-wide effort. And if you do it, you're going to be ahead of the game. You'll be leading with the millennials. You'll be making strides, and you'll be way ahead of everybody. You'll be setting what that's going to look like. And if you don't, and you're a fast follower, you're going to get punched in the head a bunch of times while you're getting caught up. It's inevitable. It's social media. Anybody? No? I have 6 minutes and 40 seconds. No? I have a story that takes exactly 6 minutes and 34 seconds. Oh. So, yes, I do. My husband turned me on to it. He's like, wait, your whole wardrobe's on the show. That too, and I checked into the hotel at 3 a.m. I came in from LA.
I think it might be a quick one, but I was just curious, when you put up the best and worst reputations, how much subjectivity is there in that, and how do you determine how do you score somebody's reputation, I guess?
So I look at it as from an impact perspective. So whenever I'm advising on that, I say you're not going to base everything on my reputation score. So let's say it's who I am. I need a context, right? It's who I am. I'm RSA. If I'm going to have a security issue, it is going to be devastating to my business. So that is the one thing I cannot have. The reputational impact of that is gigantic. And so we're going to put a lot of money, time, and effort to mitigating that risk, right? But there may be other things at RSA where it's just not that big a deal, right? And you just wouldn't put that kind of effort behind it because the reputational impact wouldn't have driven the risk higher. Like for me, it always makes the impact greater. That's what the rating is doing for me. So once I say this impact is a 5 from a reputational perspective, it's going to change this 3 to a 4. Now I got to go mitigate, right? Because I don't have a medium risk anymore. That's how you should think about reputational risk. You should think about it the same way you think about your cyber risk scores. Like it doesn't go. That's not how you're making your decision. It's one piece of information that's feeding into that larger decision. Reputational impact changes the impact of the actual risk. And that's something you want to manage. And even if, think about it this way too. Reputational impact doesn't just happen in, I like to tell marketing teams, I'm an IT person. I didn't go out and collect this data. I didn't keep it. I didn't create 80 terabytes of it. None of this was me. Oh, and now we don't know where any of it is, right? All of that is stuff that we're all going to have to deal with, right? And so for me, it goes right back to that idea that, reputation, again, go back to your registry, start scoring that stuff and make it impact the actual final score. And then when you mitigate, because I always say there's 2 mitigations. I got to mitigate the risk, and then I got to mitigate the reputational impact. If the risk is, I'm going to do 8 is great, that's my risk. Somebody brought to me and said, Renee, we want to do 8 is great. What do you think of that from a risk perspective? I would hope I'd say, I don't know, what's the industry average? 2? This is bad. It's going to encourage people to do bad stuff because what it's going to take to keep their job. So maybe we don't say 8. Maybe we say 4 is cool. 3 is neat. I don't know, but we got to figure out, we could have stopped that, right? You could have stopped that if you knew it was happening, and you could have sat down and did the scenario. If you could have sat at the table and said, this is how the outcome may go, we could have mitigated all of that. We could have put controls in place to know it was happening. We'd have known how many salespeople were getting fired, and I think in the end, it was something like 5,000 people were let go, gradually over the years because they either spoke up or they didn't want to do it. So think about that, right? All of the signs were there. All of the signals were there. Nobody was asking those questions. So for me, that's where it's at. So reputational impact is going to hit you. And remember, Wells Fargo's at the point now where the regulators still won't let them make any money. Won't let them make money. They are not allowed to post a profit because they don't know how to do that ethically. Think about that. It's amazing. At any rate, you don't want to find yourself there. And as I close this out, here's what I will say. I decided that I was going to cancel my Facebook account, that I cannot be a privacy advocate and stay on the platform. I feel like that's true. But then I decided there's a more altruistic thing I could do, and that is to donate my account to science and wipe all the public stuff out and donate it to teaching the boomers when they're looking at fake news. So that's what I'm going to do with my Facebook account. And then after the 2020 election, I am deleting it. Here's the thing. When it comes to misuse of data, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I can't have it, right? Not when social media is tearing down institutions, tearing down relationships, tearing down. I don't want to be part of it anymore. So here's what I'll say. Social media, They need to self-regulate if they have any hope of coming out of this in one piece. I don't see it ever happening. There is no pivot to privacy, but don't follow them. They clearly haven't listened to me and have no plan to. But don't do that, right? Follow your ethics, have some, follow them, and the customers will follow you. All right? Be well, and let's tweet careful out there. All right, you guys? All right, thank you.